Little fun fact, actually, I accidentally reset my whole iPhone, so I lost a ton of behind the scenes footage from the show and all of my HD pictures of the Inkblot look, so I'm really happy I'm able to do this and finally take some HD photos so that you guys can actually see the look on HD, because the pictures that I posted online were from the show. It was like screenshots from the YouTube video itself, so it just really didn't do it justice, so I'm really happy to get started on this Inkblot today.
Don't you know that you're beautiful, just the way you are, just the way you came.
Hey Bursties, I'm bursting because you guys are back on my channel. Welcome. Today, obviously, I am recreating the iconic, the infamous Inkblot look. I am so sorry it took me this long. I have obviously wanted to wait until all of my studio equipment showed up, and it is here, it is big, it is beautiful. Let me know if you guys want a studio tour in the comments. And obviously this is just such a 360 moment for me, creating the first look that I won the first challenge with in my brand new studio from winning the whole show. It just feels surreal, and I'm so happy to have you guys here to watch me recreate one of the most iconic looks of Insta Influencers Season 1. Okay, you guys, so as you guys can see, I've covered my eyebrows off camera. Let me know if you guys want a video on how I do this. I learned how to do this way back in the day when I worked at Mac, and it's one of my favorite ways to just eliminate the eyebrow without actually shaving it off. So the brushes you're gonna need are precision brushes. So I have a small pencil brush. This is smaller than your typical pencil brush. It's even tighter in diameter. And then I have a angle brush. I have a small kind of buffer brush. This is gonna be for round edges and precision blending. And then I have a narrow domed blending brush. Okay, so the next thing I have are pencils. I have 3 pencils. One of them is just a brow pencil. I like a brow pencil because they typically have wax in their formula, and that's water resistant. So I like to use that to just draw out the outline of where I'm gonna be placing everything. And that is key in maintaining the structure of the Inkblot. So just mapping out where you want all the swatches to go is imperative to the symmetry. The next thing I have are 2 pencils, a black one and a white one. This is the Nyx Epic Liners. I like these because, again, they're water resistant and they're made to last. I'm gonna be using these just in case I need to contour or highlight or bring anything forward or backward. Now, if you can find a palette that has both black, gray, white, medium tone gray in it, that's great. I was like scouring all of my products and I couldn't find any. So I just grabbed my trusty Anastasia Beverly Hills Pro palette. This actually has a series of colors in it. Another thing I have, and this is just because I am a visual artist, are 2 printouts of Inkblots. So this one is a really cool looking one, and then I have this one as well. Basically, the way I'm gonna break this down and create it is in layers, and that is everything when creating an Inkblot look. I have this so I can look back and remember what watercolor or Inkblot grayscale looks like. I also have the picture of the Inkblot that I created on the show. Now this makeup is editorial, but all structure of makeup is the same. So I'm gonna prime my skin with the POREfessional from Benefit Cosmetics. This is a pore reducing mattifying primer. So I want to control the oil of my skin during this process. So I don't want my skin to start breaking down and eating away at the makeup. So make sure that you are priming. Okay, now that we are all primed, the next thing I'm gonna do is prime my eyes. Now I am using a different product because the eye tissue is a bit different. So I'm gonna be using the brand new KVD Shake Primer. I've never used this before, so let's hope it comes through. It's like a liquid. Interesting. And I'm just gonna put a light layer right on the lid. Looks almost oily at first. Let's hope it mattifies. Oh wow, it's like grippy. Oh, that's super trippy. Now I'm gonna put my roadmap kind of in front of me so that I can start to draw out the placement for all of the Inkblots. Okay guys, we are back and all outlined. So just some rules with the outline, you guys. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. The precision work will come at the very end. So right now what we're gonna focus on is shading. And the way that we're gonna do that is jump right in with our first layer, and that is the grayscale. So I am using like this and this for the grayscale. If you have one that's a little bit less brown toned, I would recommend using that one. Now there is one more brush that I actually forgot to mention in the beginning, which is kind of a flat placement brush. I'm going to be taking a pretty good amount of gray and just placing it all along the areas that are outside of the lines that are within the lines. I'll kind of show you on this side where I'm placing it, and then hopefully you guys can just catch on. So in regards to the outline, this is just a general placement for where all of the watercolor details are going to go. So it's just kind of a marker for where the shades are going to get darker, where they're going to get more medium toned, and where they're going to be lighter. So I'll break it down just a little bit further. Obviously you can see the general outline, but then if you look kind of closely, you'll see there's some lines within lines. Now these are gonna be really dark areas. So like here, you can see I created a little bit of like a line inside of the outer line. The middle tone, like the middle area here is what's gonna be gray. And then here is gonna be more of a solid black. And then on the outline is where you're gonna start to see those really fine line details that will come at the end. So let's get started placing this gray. Another thing to keep in mind when you're placing the gray is it does not have to fit inside of the brown. Again, this is just going to be a marker for where the actual edge of the water mark or the ink mark stops. As long as you can slightly see the line through the makeup, you'll be just fine. Another thing I wanted to mention, and this might be just a little bit nitpicky, but it's something that will really help you accomplish the watercolor grayscale effect. If you take a look at the image here, you'll notice that the high points of the graphic, like meaning the lightest points, is just the paper itself. So basically where the ink, you know, dissipated and allowed the paper to show through. In this instance, the paper is our skin. So it's totally fine if your skin is poking through some of the grayscale moments, because those are gonna be like the highest points of this look. Okay, so I have the first grayscale layer placed, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side off camera just to save some time, and I'll be right back. So now that I have the grayscale placed on both sides as symmetrical as I can, we're gonna jump in with our next shade, which is black. So we're gonna be trying to mimic these areas here. I'm going to allow the blend between the black and the gray shades that I'm using to be the medium tone that we're seeing before we get to the high planes here. So basically we're going to be mimicking these shades here, and hopefully it will just make the look that much more realistic. Now this step, you're definitely going to want to do it in a back and forth motion. Again, this is the first time you're going to start to see this graphic come to life with the symmetry. So keeping the placement as close as you can is going to be the best. So I would recommend doing one step and then doing the same step on the other side. And then I would use at least 2 layers. This is not going to be the darkest point on the ink blot, but it is definitely going to be an indicator of symmetry. So you want to make sure that it has a good solid layering to it and that you're placing it in a symmetrical way. What I'm noticing right now that I'm doing that I didn't mention is that when I'm placing the product, there's never a harsh line, so I'm making sure that it's fading out. The reason for this is because, again, we're mimicking water, and water is, you know, the most fluid thing on the planet. So there is no harsh lines with water unless it's an abrupt stop. So all of this here, again, we're layering. We want to make sure that this is, you know, looking like it's fading into the black. Oh, and also picking and choosing. So if you guys can tell, I'm not making it a consistent dark color all along the edge. I'm creating some darker pockets as I'm going that have absolutely none of the technique. So again, we're just mimicking the fluidity, but also inconsistency of like a free fall watercolor art. So before I start using this, I just wanted to introduce another precision brush, actually, which this one's a really short, very narrow, flat brush. So what I'm gonna be doing is a more detailed and tighter blended line with the black in this area here. I'm realizing that there are some tighter blended lines beyond this here. And the brushes I was just using are a little bit too big diameter-wise, so we are going to start with this guy. Okay, so now that we've gotten the ink blot texture kind of down packed and a little bit more filled in, we're gonna be going in with our NYX Epic eyeliner in the shade black, and we're gonna be creating some depth and dimension within those shades that we just created. We're gonna do that by applying pressure when we place it and then flicking it out, or filling areas in that I just feel like need to look deeper. Okay, to save some storage, I'm gonna just do this side of my face for the rest of the video. So now that we have the depth pockets on this side, what I'm gonna do now is go in with some more black and gray shadow with this buffer brush, and we're just gonna have a ton of fun and start to fuse all of these elements together with blending. This part is fun because it just doesn't need to be really perfect at all. What we're doing right now is just kind of creating more of that fluid effect. by blending all of these elements together. I want to start to close in these flesh spaces where my skin is poking through. Our next step is the detail step. So this is when we go in and make all the lines look rigid and harsh. So ensuring that they look really blended first is going to make that come to life. The shadow should be blending in and fusing with the grayscale shadow that we put in as our first step. Right now we're seeing how that is actually going in as a buffer and is blending everything out. So it's so important that you guys do that first step. So you guys can see this side is already starting to look a lot more like watercolor versus this side, just with a little bit of blending. And make sure that you guys are not blending away or erasing the really fine lines that you can still kind of see, because we are literally going to be using that with this next step. And all of the areas that we've left kind of blank, now is your time to tie them in, and make sure that you're kind of just softening that area with a little bit of gray. Does not have to be perfect. Like I said, it just needs to look fused together. Like, inconsistency in the scale is kind of the pattern, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so you guys can see why I absolutely love having an eye pencil handy in doing this. The product stays exactly where you place it, which really allows you to just get the job done quickly. I like the NYX Epic Eyeliners because when you place it on your face, it just doesn't move hardly at all. So you can place it and then blend it out and it still maintains the shape. So that's really important for this look. And also the pigment. As you guys can tell, the darkest part of this whole look is gonna be the eye pencil. Personally, in all my years of doing makeup, I've never experienced an eye, like a black shade darker than in an eye pencil, even an eyeshadow. Something about an eye pencil's formula just, I don't know, allows the black to be darker, but it definitely is the only thing that gets the job done. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side off camera, and then I'm gonna come back for the final step. Yes, the final step in the ink blot look, you guys. This one is the most important, so make sure you stay tuned. Okay, you guys, I'm getting excited because this is starting to remind me of the look that I created for the show in that moment, and just this coming together. It was really so crazy and like fate that I had this idea and that it was executed like almost perfectly on the first try. It's making this time around so much easier, and yeah, just a really special moment that's obviously come 360. So I am really excited that we've gotten the shading down packed. Now, another element that I actually forgot that really set my look off was the droplets that you guys saw. It looked like ink dripping down. So we're gonna go ahead and try to remake that with a little bit of eyeliner. This is the Revlon Wonder Woman collection liner in a shade, ooh, it's just a black liner. And then I have a cup of water. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna load up a bunch of product and I'm gonna start to make a dot right here. Now, timing is imperative right now. You don't want this to dry. So then I'm gonna take my water and a liner brush and I'm gonna start to build up the water right in this area. What we basically want is for this to start to get heavy and drop down. You don't want too much water because you don't want it to lose its opacity, but you do want it to just do that. Perfect, and now we have a drop. So now we're gonna do the same thing, and actually I like this piece up here, so we're gonna do the same thing. Absorb that last bit. You really just cannot mimic the way that water runs down the face and the texture that it makes. So it's really good to know how to create little raindrops or splatters. Okay, you guys, I'm gonna add the droplets to the other side and then we'll be back for the final detail work. Okay guys, and now that we've got our drip, what we're gonna do now is go in and create the edges of the watercolor. So if you guys can tell, on most watercolor or ink blot looks, there's gonna be like a hard edge that makes, it's a really thin hard edge that makes it look like it's abruptly stopped or dried on a flat surface. So if you guys take a look here, you'll see the edges of this is really rigid and kind of has really tiny little details. So we're gonna try our best to recreate those really thin lines with this liquid liner and hopefully keep it as symmetrical as possible while accomplishing this really cool watercolor effect. Now's the time to use the outline. So follow the outline, make sure that we are staying symmetrical in placement as to where the details are gonna be. And this is also the opportunity for us to fill in the lines that we just feel like filling in and then leaving other lines blank. I'll put my original look somewhere over here, but basically if you can take a look here, you'll see that I created some really, really thin areas that had lots of black around it, that had solid black around it, and that had little to no black around it. So this is probably the only consistent thing throughout the whole look, because this is how the whole thing dries. And even if it isn't the same, if you keep the same consistency and placement, it kind of tricks the eye into looking like, wow, there's so many tiny little details on both sides. They're generally in the same area, it must be perfect. So basically you just want your hand to kind of be doing this the whole time. That creates tiny, tiny microscopic details that motion alone and the actual eyeliner formula and brush creates on its own. So even though it won't be completely symmetrical, it's gonna be the closest you're gonna get to symmetry with fine details on both sides. That's not gonna take you, 19 hours. So just keep that in mind while you're applying the product. It's just a constant shaking motion while you're applying the liquid liner to create little tiny divots. So notice how I just have the general shape down, and it's not even like perfect, but it still kind of gives the illusion that it's perfectly symmetrical. You'll notice when you're doing this that sometimes there's a little bit of distance in the between the liner and the shadow. So if that's the case, that's fine. You can't always predict where your hand is going to shake the liner. So just go back in with your shading brush and just fill in those gaps. The side profiles are actually kind of fun because, you can't really see both sides at the same time. So I would just, peek in with the other side and get a general shape. But for the most part, you can just freestyle it by keeping that same technique with your hand on the side. Okay, so now that we have the hard watercolored ridges on, the last thing that I do to kind of trick people's minds into thinking that this is totally symmetrical are dots. So dots are a really easy way. If somebody sees one and then looks for it on the other side, if they find it, their mind registers symmetry. So if you notice on this side, I have a series of dots that you won't find directly next to them, but right now we're gonna add them, and hopefully it makes it look that much more symmetrical. Also, these dots are not perfectly round. You can make yours perfectly round, but again, this is more of an ink blot style, so I'm just kind of dabbing it and creating that natural oblong realistic effect. Okay, you guys, we are all done. I am so relieved. As you guys know, I have a brand new studio and it was throwing some technical things my way while I was trying to record this, but I was determined to bring artistry back to my channel, you guys, and I have been waiting for this new setup to do this look, because this look, I just feel like it had to be in the new setup. This was the first moment that I really thought I could actually win the competition, and it was the first challenge that I won, and it was, one of the most creative looks that I've ever done. This moment is really 360 for me. This was my first look that I created, the first one that James critiqued, our first moment together, and I felt it was only right that it was in the brand new studio. So that is what I've been holding out on recreating the looks from the show, you guys. Make sure if you enjoyed this video that you give me a big thumbs up. Follow me on all of my socials. I am STRASHME on all of my social medias except for Twitter. I am STRASHME with 2 E's. I just got verified on Twitter, and I want to just say a big, humongous thank you for verifying me on Instagram, you guys. I could not have done that without you. With all 780,000 of you guys following me on there, I'm sure that had a little bit to do with getting me verified on Instagram. Obviously, James, thank you so much, and Insta Influencer, for creating all of these opportunities for me to continue to excel. I had so much fun recreating this look with you guys today. Make sure you guys are following me on all of my socials. If you enjoy more artistry content, make sure you give me a big thumbs up. Make sure that you are subscribed to my channel. We are almost at 1 million subscribers, you guys. I want to hit 1 million before the year is over. Let me know if you guys think I can do it in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video, you guys, and I will see you guys next time.
Don't you know that you're beautiful?